Hey, Mike, what's everyone talking about?
10 things.
That's it?
That's it.
No more.
No more.
No
No
less.
more, no less.
All right.
Just 10.
Matt Robison, Mike Morton, Financial Life Planning. These are the 10 things everyone is talking about. I mean, I guess it's not like we have to constrain this a little bit, right? It's like the 10 things everyone's talking about when it comes to personal finances.
Or if you were hanging out with me. If you were hanging out with me,
where does this come from?
We'd be talking about this. 10 things.
This is like an article, right?
Yeah. So a friend of mine, Allan Roth, great, fantastic writer, been in the industry for decades. Highly recommend checking out his stuff. He came up with the 10 things that he's been talking about with clients for 2024. I thought it was a great list, so I thought I would give my spin on the same 10 things that he wrote about. So, we'll definitely reference his article in the show notes, but these are the 10 things to know for 2024.
All right. Sounds awesome. And I hope people will hang on till the end, where we will reveal the one critical lesson. It might be the only thing that I learned in college. It turned into a major life lesson for me, and we'll see what people make of it. Hey, before we dive in, congratulations. You have a life accomplishment. It feels like Pokemon. It's like you have found a Nerf blurter or whatever they call it. You get like a token. There's like a cha-ching. You have a major life accomplishment, man.
Well, I don't know, accomplishment or just survival. But yeah, last week I put that in air quotes, ran 50 miles at an ultra marathon, and it was super fun. I don't know. Can I say that?
If you had crawled 50 miles, that would be pretty good. That's congratulations. Wait, so where was this?
So outside Massachusetts, and it was a loop kind of out and back. Beautiful Chesterfield Gorge. Beautiful trail if you're in Massachusetts. Ran along a river. So it was 8 miles out, 8 miles back. Did that 3 times plus a little bit. And great group of people. It was really fun atmosphere. And yeah, we had a good time.
First of all, don't think I have a sufficient understanding of what a gorge is. Second of all, I'm not sure why one would go there to run 50 miles. No. Especially, I love the concept of I'm going to go run 50 miles back and forth. I think I'd feel more accomplished if I went from point A to point B.
Yeah, exactly. You see a lot more countryside when you go from A to B. This was just kind of
but hey, look,
hill.
Covering 50 miles at all is that's awesome. Yeah. So that's what you do with your free time because you're a maniac. And the rest of the time you sit around and think about like financial planning. And so that's what, and you have all these conversations. Like, is that why this article sort of jumped out to you? It's like, these are also conversations you're having with your
Absolutely.
clients?
These 10 things. It's funny if we were just, hanging out, these come up all the time. And they're all, each of these 10, we'll have to go pretty quick, Matt, to keep this within our normal episode bounds. Because all 10 of these could be, an entire episode and the nuances and getting into details. So we're just going to give the highlights here on the 10.
All right. So here's my tip to listeners. If any of these 10 things, because we're going to do a drive-by on these, if any of these 10 things jump out to you and you're like, I would like to know more. It's like Starship Troopers. Do you want to know more? Let us know. You send Mike an email and we'll do a show about it. All right.
Perfect.
What's number one? I don't understand your I have your notes here. I don't even understand your notes on what these things are. It's delightful. So what is get real, man?
Get real, man.
What are you, the dude from The Big Lebowski? Get real. All right. What does that mean?
Real returns versus nominal returns. Matt, you know the difference between real versus nominal? It's the Wayback Machine for you and your classwork.
I knew that when I was an econ student. Nowadays, I have no idea what's real anymore. It's like there was a spoon. Trinity told me to follow the rabbit, and then I found myself here with you.
So this comes in real returns. Nominal returns are what you kind of see, like the stock market goes up by 10% a year, historically over the long run. So that's 10% in nominal returns. But your real returns, you have to take into consideration what you can actually buy with that money. So you subtract out the inflation, right? We all know that a pack of gum has gone from 5 cents to $2.50, over the last 30 years. So your 5 cents, no longer buys what it could buy before. So real returns are what matter, especially in the longer time frames. When you talk about, I want to retire, I want to have enough money for 10 or 20 or 30 years. It's real returns that matter. And this comes into play very recently because everybody loves that you're getting a great return on your cash, right? I'm getting like 5%. I can get a CD for 5%, money market, I'm getting 5% return. But you forget inflation is like 3.5%, right? So in the last 12-month period, it's 3.4%. So your 5% return is really only 1.5% in real return.
When people bring this up with you, is it like they're bummed because their inflation is so much on the brain, or they bring it up because they're stoked because of the returns they're getting, and then you have to bring them down?
Yeah, it's usually like pretty stoked, I can get this, I'm trying to find a high yield account because my checking account's giving me like nothing, but I know I can get 5%, it's so great. And it's like, yes, that is great. And you should do that and understand that it's important to do it because it's getting eaten away. So the checking account, if your money is sitting in an account giving you no return, you're losing money. You're losing purchasing power.
Well, so I assume you let people down easy. Yeah. Well, that's a great lead into your number 2.
Yeah. Your cash is one of your riskiest assets. I meet a lot of people that are holding cash, and it feels really good to have cash. And it gets built up. Many of my clients, they come, we start doing some work together, and it's like, oh, I've got 50, one of the reasons I came to you is I got some money I've saved and I want to get it invested. 50,000, 100,000 is just sitting in cash. And as we just said, if that cash is sitting there, it's really not making that great of a return. And so that actually makes it one of your riskiest assets. And people don't think about it that way because it feels so good to have that buffer, to have the dollars in the bank. But it's very, very risky because it's losing purchasing power every single year.
I really don't love the way that these first two things are like bummers. Really, are people sort of down on the inflation environment?
It's not down on it. It's just understanding. Like the whole point of this episode is just to bring awareness to some of these things, right? So when you see the return, like, oh, I'm making 10% or I'm making 5%, just understanding that, that is getting eroded, and so it is important, right? So you really want to pay attention to these things. It's real returns that matter. So you have money to buy that new car in 5 years or 10 years or change homes. It's going to cost more in the future. And so you need to keep getting that return. And then with the cash, you would just want to have a great investment portfolio. Cash feels great, but you just can't be heavy in cash. It's got to be invested for the long term. Got it.
Although I remember we were talking a couple months ago about the fact that we might be entering, I'm seeing peril everywhere. We might be entering a period of slightly lower returns from the stock market than we've enjoyed in the last 10 years. So maybe rebalancing that. But you're saying that doesn't mean like hold a bundle in cash either.
Well, that's the problem with that is I do believe that's true. The next 10-year return might not be that 10% per year average, historical, nominal return. All right. So we might be in a period where the next 10 years, starting from today, Matt, if we look back on this episode, it's like, all right, maybe it was 7.5% per year instead of 10%. So lower than the historical average. But you just don't know when that's coming. Is that coming next year, 4 or 5 years from now? Is there going to be a recession or downturn? So you need to stay well diversified and invested sort of at all times.
All right. Well, the first two, what I've gotten from it is you're not making as much money as you think you are. And in fact, the cash you have is full of risk. So let's go on the lighter side with a real upper for number 3.
Yeah. Try not to die the richest person.
Go on. Please tell me more about my rich corpse.
So the whole idea, and I run into this a lot actually, you spend, it's a psychology. We spend so much of our lives saving and investing. 40 or 50 years or more, like save, invest. It's like drilled into us, opt into the 401ks, save into your IRAs, make sure you're invested and well diversified, everything that we talk about on this show. And so then to flip to, I'm retired, I'm going to start spending, from my portfolio, it's really hard. That's why you want to be careful and make sure you're enjoying your life and being able to, the money is there so that you can enjoy your life.
It is really hard. if if you're the kind of person who listens to a show like this and you're oriented toward efficiency and optimization and hedging and all the things we talk about with good reason, right? Because we care about accruing enough assets to live the life we want and to pass resources on to our kids. You care about stuff like that, then it's sort of hard to take the step back. I find it hard too. I really do. And we were just talking about this. My wife and I had this idea of, all right, we're going to take a road trip this summer. This kind of connects to the inflation theme. We're going to take a road trip. Our kids are in an age where this is going to be awesome, notwithstanding the fact that my daughter thinks that it's like a fate worse than death. And we're going to, drive all around. We're going to see friends. We're going to have experiences. Great. And plus, it's going to save us so much money because we're driving. And the whole idea was, well, we'll rent a van and then fly back. Turns out our whole idea cost so much money. And I mean, for a whole variety of other reasons, we chickened out. We didn't do it. But it really is amazing. My wife and I were talking about this, like how much of a mental impediment it is to say, like, do we want to spend this money? And I don't know, maybe we made a good decision, but it is easy to get into a mindset where you never do anything because everything's expensive.
That's right.
Everything is expensive. And at some point, you've got to decide like, yeah, I want to do some things.
It's very interesting you say that. A lot of my clients, one of the benefits that I provide is telling them it's okay to spend that money. We have buckets of money that's like, oh, I want to go traveling. Not you. No, you need to save your money. You're in trouble.
No. I mean, they should spend their money on me.
On you. Yeah. No, it's fascinating. Everybody, it's one of the things that I hear a lot is like, oh, I want to travel or I want to do these things. Okay, let's set up a bucket of money, so it's there. And then I encourage them like, the money's there. What are you going to do this year? Where are you going? How are you going to spend it? And they're like, is it okay I do this? I'm like, yes, you need to do this, and giving them that permission, is very helpful.
It so reminds me of that concept you introduced a few weeks ago of you plan for these major spending categories so that there's not a surprise. And if it's part of the plan, it makes it so much psychologically easier. If you know what? If we had pre-planned, we're going to spend $5,000 on a summer vacation as a family, make some memories, do some cool new experiences, it would have felt like, well, the money's already there. It's like it's already spent almost. So,
that's exactly
there are
right.
hacks to work yourself around these psychological pitfalls. Speaking of which, number 4, that's what it prompts for me.
Number 4. So Allan Roth's number 4 is you won't have nerves of steel after a stock plunge. So recall, when the stock market always goes up and down, but when it goes down, how do you feel? If you think back to March of 2020, during the beginning of the pandemic and the stock market's down 20%, or you go back to the housing crisis, 2008, 2009, stock market's down like 40%. Were you like, woohoo, I'm buying in. This is great. Everything's on sale. No, you were not. You were terrified, running for the exits. So just recognize that this is why we preach, have a consistent portfolio that you can stomach and handle when you have these downturns. And most likely for most people, you will not have the nerves of steel to, either stay invested or to add to your investments during those downturns.
I have a simple solution for this. Just don't look.
There you go.
Don't look. There's a stock plunge. It's like, I'm not going to look. Yeah. I really am a set it and forget it. I mean, there's a jokey version of this. It's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where the character has this emergency kit for if he's in great danger. And it's basically just a crash helmet where you could lower the visor like Luke Skywalker battling the little drone, and you just lower the visor so you can't see any of the dangerous things happening around you. Yeah. That's essentially what I do. It's my entire strategy, and it works.
Yeah. There you go. Nice.
All right. Number 5, Mike, this is it. You've been thinking a little bit about changing the name of this podcast. And I found the wording formula for you.
I don't want to know. Investing should oscillate between boring and painful.
Boring and painful with Mike.
Painful. So good.
By definition, you can't be both at the same time. Hence the word oscillate. I get it.
Boring. Oh, that's so good. Yes, boring and painful. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, show where we go back and forth between boring and painful.
That's right.
Which one are we doing right now?
Which one?
Is the question.
Oh man, I think it's pretty painful actually. So yeah, this is that's investing. It shouldn't be exciting, because if it is exciting, then you might be in for some more risk than you're willing to take on. So really, it's mostly boring. And then, like we just said, pull down the visor, Matt. It's getting to it's the painful stage. So pull down the visor, don't look, and weather the storm until it's back to being boring.
I disagree. I think Allan is full of it. And it goes back to my pull down the visor strategy. I don't find it boring or painful. I mean, I find that you got to go to the website and set up your new account, and some of that, it's not like I do that recreationally, but I don't find it painful, because aside from the logistics parts, because essentially I follow that strategy of I look about once a year, maybe once every 6 months.
So it's boring, right? So it's boring because you just tune in every 6 months.
It's not that boring because I'm not spending any time on it. I mean,
well, that's the point.
I should probably, if I were better at this, and if I were following more of your advice, it would probably be a little bit more boring, because I'd be doing some of the mechanics that you should do.
The point is, it's so boring you don't even check. That's how boring it is. All right, so you're not even checking, because it's like it's like watching paint dry. It's just like, why would you tune in?
But I don't find it painful, because you know what? It works.
Okay, here's the thing, Matt.
I'm doing fine.
You're doing fine. You will find it painful when you tune in a few years. I know you got quite a few expenses these days, and when you tune in and you're like, hey, I want to retire. This is painful. I can't retire yet.
I'm on track. I think I will, like everyone else, if there were a major stock plunge, I would not enjoy that experience, right? That part is not great when I start to say, wow, my retirement date becomes like 5 years further out in the future. But I really do have the faith that if I just stick with the program and I have enough runway.
Yeah, but let me flip it around. A lot of who Allan might be talking to here are people that are retired.
Oh,
okay, so now you have a $2 million portfolio. Things are going great. I'm just taking out $50,000 a year, and plus my Social Security. I'm living really well. Now that portfolio goes down to 1.2 million. From 2 million to 1.2 million, you're like, what the? Okay, how? Right. This is now painful.
Yeah, if your time horizon is 10 or 20 years, then it's easy. It's a lot easier to say.
If you're spending from the portfolio, I think that's where it can become very painful.
Yeah. All right. I see where he's coming from. Number 6,
you have lots of funds, but you aren't diversified. I run into this, that people come in like, oh, look, I'm super diversified. I got a lot of funds. And when you look at them, they're just totally overlapping. And so you're not nearly as diversified as you think. So number of funds, and we've talked about this probably quite a while ago. Number of funds doesn't mean you're diversified. It's what they hold. So just be careful, be aware of your portfolio.
I do have a little bit of a propensity every time I, do something like I just go for the simple option of a target date fund or, both for 529s and for retirement. And it is true that since they're all designed the same way, they're sort of prone to the same. I'm not as diversified as I could be if I did a little bit more manual operation.
Those are pretty good because you've got U.S. international, large, small, and you've got stocks and bonds. So those are good. What I find is, hey, I'm holding the total U.S. stock market and the S&P 500 and large cap growth. And it's like, well, those are all big kind U.S. companies.
The same. Yeah,
so you just want to be careful.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. I'm going to go ahead and call shenanigans on your next 2.
All right.
I feel like your next 2 are really the same damn point.
All right, maybe it's 9 things. It's not 10 anymore.
All right. Well, do number 7 and then do number 8. And I I really want, this is like the old Sanka commercials. It's like, we're going to see if your listeners can tell the difference.
Tell the difference, yeah. All right, number 7, bond funds are not riskier than bonds. So a lot of people have this sense that, and this is individual bonds. So I can buy an individual bond, like a 2-year treasury from the US government, and in 2 years, I'm going to get back my money, and in between, I'm going to get some interest. Or I can buy a bond fund. There's the total US bond market fund, and I can just buy that ETF, and it holds a whole range of basket of bonds inside the bond fund. And many people think that bond funds are more risky than individual bonds. And that's not true. They all have certain characteristics, but that bond fund holds individual bonds. It holds them to maturity. So they're not any more risky.
Are bond funds more volatile?
They can be, yes, absolutely.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Actually,
it depends on your definition of risk. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I was dinging Allan for kind of like getting 2 list items out of one idea, this one's interesting because I know so little. I really don't know anything about bond funds except for, like they're really important and I don't know anything about them. Actually, that's 2 things I know.
It's 2 things. I think let's put a pin in that bond. It would be interesting to do a little bit deeper dive on this topic because it is true. People think like, oh, an individual bond, I'm going to get my money back. Whereas a bond fund, I see them, and especially 2 years ago, like they just really tanked. But it's just not true that they're riskier. The individual bonds have many of the same exact characteristics.
I see.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. It's time for the Sanka challenge here. No, it was Folgers. What's Sanka? What? Folgers, like we replaced. I hated those commercials because it was if you were one of those people on camera, I mean, I'm sure they made it all up, but like if you were actually one of these people on camera, it's like, we went to this high-priced restaurant and replaced their regular coffee with Folgers crystals. And I'm like, forget you, man. I'm paying $30 for this cup of coffee. I don't want Folgers. All right, but anyway, let's see if people can tell number 8 apart from number 7.
High-quality bond and bond funds are not, well, they have risk, but they're not as risky as other bond opportunities.
All right, I like your idea of you've got to educate me on bond funds because I feel like we did this like 2 years ago and I retained nothing. Like we need the complete idiot's guide to bond funds. We'll do that in a future episode. But the take home here is high quality bonds and bond funds. There's a perception that they're risky. They're not that risky.
That's right. That's correct. Because what happened is a couple of years ago, they went down by like 10%, right? The stock market crash, went down and so did bonds. And that's very, very unusual. And I'm not saying it can't happen again, but the point is, yes, bonds went down by 10% in a year. That's nothing for stocks. Stocks go down 20, 30, 40%. And for bonds, 10% was a real outlier. I mean, most years these things go, high quality bonds, you're not getting a ton of interest, but they don't fluctuate. 2 to 5%, is kind of, ooh, geez, they're really moving, compared to stocks is where the risk is.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Well, this next one, I feel like you've drummed this.
All right, you explain this next one, Matt. Here you go. You do number 9 from Allan Roth's list.
I explain it. No. I'm going to repeat it phonetically. That's my whole plan. I'm just going to say it out loud and let's just assert that this makes sense.
Okay.
Number 9 is your assets are not located in the most tax efficient manner. And your whole point is that equities should go in it says taxable and tax-free accounts first. Wait, those are not the same thing.
That's right. It's 2 different things. That's where they should go.
But asset allocation. All right, I take it back. Your explanation of a simple sentence makes no sense to me, man. All right,
there's too many words. There's too many words in here. But we talked about this, right? We had a whole episode on this. Asset location matters. And most people are just sort of ad hoc. Like, oh, I've got my 401k. I've got some extra money in my brokerage account. I'm just going to grab, target date fund. Like you just said, I just hold target date funds everywhere. And that is not very tax efficient. And so we can do a better job there of being tax efficient. So we'll have a couple extra things in the show notes, but especially you can go back to the episode and really listen in.
Yeah, we did a great series. It was great for me. We did a great series on this about, it was like the rescue plan and what if you're over allocated to taxable accounts, and it's good. You're investing. It's pretty darn good.
Yes.
But you have a tremendous potential for tax drag. And so this is where, like the legal money laundering scheme comes in and, all these tricks to try to slowly port as much of your asset base over into these tax preferred accounts. And that it makes a ton of sense.
One takeaway, your bonds and bond funds should be in your tax deferred accounts.
Interesting. All right. We'll chalk that up to another thing I don't know about bond funds.
Yeah.
Coming soon, this long book about the things Matt doesn't know about bonds. All right, let's close out on number 10.
I love this from Allan Roth because he has, every time I've seen him, he definitely quotes this in all of his articles and all the time. I've always said investing was simple. I never said taxes were. And taxes are super complicated and have lots of implications to how you do things. But investing should be very simple. And unfortunately, taxes are not.
I agree. And again, I'm joking about the visor strategy, but I kind of mean it. Like, I find that this is my big takeaway from listening to you over all these episodes is you really don't have to overcomplicate this stuff. You've said that there is kind of the more advanced, hacks that you can do. You have a deep expertise in a lot of this stuff. And that's what clients pay you for, is like to do the more advanced stuff. But for me, for the DIY stuff, that's like 95% of what I do, just like keeping to the most simple strategies works. And I don't have to futz with it. It is at tax time that I get all messed up.
Yeah, that's true. That being said, I will say I run across so many situations where we can save tens of thousands of dollars in taxes. And people chug along thinking like, hey, I'm pretty simple. It's a pretty simple scenario and stuff. And yes, and we can optimize and save you tens of thousands of dollars in what you're paying in tax.
Right. Well, and that just gets back to number 9, right? Which is like making some smart decisions, on the front end about how that waterfall of where you're putting things. And, if you've gotten yourself into a not so good situation, how do you start to get yourself out of it? That's where the payoff is. I agree completely. I agree with this point. All right. Yeah. Should we get to our one thing?
All right, let's get to the one thing.
This is a rule that I came up with for myself in college, and it may be the only thing that I actually learned in college that really stuck with me, which is always leave a party while you're having a good time. And the while is the most important part, because you could think to yourself like, well, if I'm still in the black, right? Like if I'm still having a positive experience, I'm fine. Or as soon as I stop having a positive experience, that's when to go. No. The important thing here is when I hit like my peak of enjoyment, leave. Because I walk away. This is like the whole Daniel Kahneman behavioral economics, your lived experience versus your remembered experience. And I will walk away with something that I remember and feel great about and feel excited to do again. As soon as diminishing returns set in on any activity and I'm having less of a good time, the way I remember it totally changes. And so I try this. I'm not always successful at it, but I do try, like, while I'm really still having a great time, I'm out.
Is that what you did? You just like do the George Costanza? Oh, that's it. I'm out.
Yep. I mic drop and I peace out on things. This comes up. I coach my daughter's soccer team, and one of the other coaches, we're trying to decide, should we have a team next season? Because we have a lot of players moving out of town and it's going to be much smaller and it's very, very hard to manage. And this is a great team, great group of kids. And we asked all the families, and they're saying, yeah, let's keep it going. We'll find a way. We'll make it work. And this other coach quoted back to me, he said, this feels like let's leave this party while we're having a good time. And I think we're going to do that. I think we're probably going to just leave it here, and it'll be a great formative experience, hopefully, unless we screw it up. And, and it'll accomplish what we want it to accomplish. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. And I'll add when you bring in the kids, it's great to think about this as well. If it's an activity that you want them to keep doing, or you want to keep doing with them, leave while you're still having fun, and then they'll want to revisit that activity. They'll have a positive, like, oh yeah, it was so great. Like, let's go do that again. And you're like, yeah.
Yes. It's like the show business thing, like with the audience, always leave them wanting more. Speaking of which, I think that's a great piece of advice for us. Lest we wear out our welcome. All right. That's it. So for Mike Morton, I'm Matt Robison. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for joining us on Financial Life Planning. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to and rate the podcast on Apple iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a massive difference. If you have a comment or question, please email me, mike@mortonfa.com. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. This recording is for informational purposes only and should not be considered for investment advice. Opinions expressed are as of the date of recording. Such opinions are subject to change. I cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the data presented here.